Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is your AstroShaman, Pernell. We are generating an economy of harmony, leveraging human design and genetic astrology. And today we're going to talk about the genetics of Gemini, Venus and Gemini. I'm so joyous right now. First off, this is my Venus return. I'm already in range. The mutation of this Venus in Gemini, which actually sits mostly in the throat. Most of Gemini sits in human design in the throat. Gate 20 will go through Venus in Gemini. Gate 16, gate 12, gate 45. That's 4 gates. They're all in the throat. And what we need to understand Venus in Gemini is the throat chakra, or the Vishuddha in Indian chakra systems, is where all the lower level chakras go through their purification process. So our security needs, our sexuality, our creativity, okay, our willpower, and our ability to feel the emotions, the emotional wave of life and existence of animals, birds, plants, ants, this sense of oneness, this mutation into unity. Eventually, we're working to the heart chakra, okay, which is a lot of the South Node in Scorpio, and opening our hearts to compassion, as well as some Taurus energy. All of what I just said are the lower level frequencies, where we're often more run by fear and everything I just said prior. By the time we get to the throat chakra, we're working with the higher consciousness, the beginning of it, where it all needs to get filtered. So there's this purification that happens while Venus is in Gemini, and actually I believe that is, I don't know what gate that is, if I'm being real, but it's one of these gates while Venus is in Gemini. So what we're in right now at 29 degrees when I'm recording this, 29 degrees, Venus is in Taurus, home sign, dignified. We've stayed still long enough to grasp what passions do we want to actually assert into the physical world? What vision do we want to ground into reality? And you likely started taking some of that. The key is to not be mediocre in this process, because gate 8 for Taurus, which is where it's at right now, gate 8 has been active for a week or so. And it says that mediocrity, you know, choosing to be mediocre, aka imitating other creative expressions, is ultimately a disservice to humanity, a disservice to society. Now, when we leave this place of mediocrity, what do you get left coming in the gate 8? You get this, you work towards this exquisiteness. You work towards differentiating yourself. And how you do that is not to be overly critical of the art. And when we say art, we're talking Venus and Gemini, right? Like, I gotta help you understand what we're working towards. There are 2 different transits, but before I even go any further, okay, I'm almost so overwhelmed with excitement. You can hear it in my voice. We have on April 14th, which is actually my birthday coming up. Hey now, give a thumbs up for the birthday boy. Thank y'all for making my dreams come true, my wishes come true. But April 14th, we have a square, okay? We have our first square. Venus and Gemini will actually square Saturn in Pisces, I believe at 4 degrees, okay? So this is a feminine degree. The throat chakra works very closely related, this Venus and Gemini, with the solar plexus chakra. Essentially, the solar plexus chakra is this, actually, ironically, I know what I just said, but the solar plexus, aka Saturn and Pisces, along with other Aquarian energies, it is what begins to mutate our actual expression and how we take actions and what we say out loud, to the point where speaking, the voice begins to hit something called like an escape velocity, where sound can reach frequencies where it completely dissipates. The sound coming out of my voice right now can reach velocities where it completely dissipates. This actually happens while Venus is in Gemini. Okay, so this squaring of Venus to Saturn is saying how can you be pure and authentic and more present with the words you say, how you say them, as well as being mindful of being indifferent and taking a path of elitism and saying, you know, I've done the spiritual work, so I'm above you. And it's like, it's just redundant in nature. Anybody that has done the spiritual work wouldn't say that. And so taking the place where, this is the key thing, where you want to watch in this first square, Venus square and Saturn, Gemini square and Pisces, you want to watch for people choosing to say nothing and almost taking their silence as in this vain approach where they value themselves so much. They think they're so top notch that they think they need to say nothing at all. And deep within, though, internally, they're speaking loud, they're speaking pridefully. And this is the lower frequencies, the shadows of a Venus in Gemini, where, you know, vanity is much more well disguised than pride. Pride is like a Leo-esque thing where people, like, you see pride, you see the sun, but vanity is very different. It's Gemini, and it's like, look, these are just the thoughts going on internally. This is just the, Gemini is I think. So this is just what I think. And I don't always need to express out loud what I think. I could just think it. So this is one thing you want to watch for, but ultimately at the higher frequency of this, like, you can see through this as you speak, be, act, live omnipresently, okay? Just being present of all things at the same time. And when that happens, you actually, ironically, do end up shutting up, but you're not shutting up anymore, silently criticizing others. So this is something to watch for, Venus and Gemini. You know, they are very versatile signs. Like I said, I have a natal Venus and Gemini. So when I see the first square come in, this is what you want to watch for. It's like people stepping or, you know, diffusing through boundaries that you set up. Even if you verbally say something like, this is my boundary, and people more psychically or etherically want to phase through those boundaries in order to not address their own pain or their own suffering or their own, you know, victimized reactions, okay, based off of some fear. Be careful of that. And then by May 4th, I believe, let me check my chart. By May 4th, we have Venus squaring during this Venus and Gemini transit. Oh, so the first square will happen at 4 degrees. I said it right, my bad. So that's where what you want to think about on the first square, April 14th. Okay, this is Venus to Saturn. You want to think about, how do I gaslight myself? How do my own internal thoughts that I keep to myself equate to me gaslighting myself and tricking myself out of being exquisite and actually falling exquisite in my expression, exquisite in the art that I bring into the world, something that has never been created. Something where if I tried to speak what I really felt, I would do a disservice, not just to myself, but to humanity. And so we actually need to create. We need to write poetry. We need to get on a canvas. We need to sing to the top of our lungs, because this is what the beauty behind Venus is asking us to essentially attach to, obsess over, get addicted by, to create something that is not serving the self, but ultimately expressing divinity with me or you as the vessel, okay? To the point where, like, ironically, you get less joy from how cool it is for yourself and more joy for how much it has advanced society. So that's the first square. The second one is Neptune. That's what it is. Venus square Neptune. Okay, so now this is happening more like May 4th. Yeah, 2023, Venus and Gemini will square Neptune in Pisces. Now Neptune is still in gate 36, human design, and this will be more like gate 45, okay? And I am curious, if you patiently give me a moment. I am curious about something. Okay. I wish I got some water. 45. I understand. Okay, so okay, be mindful of dominating people, okay? on this May 4th square, you really want to be mindful of dominating people, and work more closer, work in the energies of synergy, work in the vibrations of synergy, and that will lead us towards communion, okay, where we can collectively dissolve these false realities and boundaries. One, that any one of us can be such an individual that it matters, which is just this awkwardness, because like most times, like we always got to go to the low frequencies. During this Venus Gemini transit, it's going to be like, look, leaving from Taurus especially, like be so exquisite that you will never imitate and fall into the space of mediocre, okay? And then it's like when you get there, it's like you almost always have to re-give up the parts that we identify with. Okay, well, great, I did this, I'm finally unique. And now that I'm so unique and I'm sharing it with the collective, like I need to essentially surrender my uniqueness, okay? And so this, as we do this as a collective, this is something that's happening, again, at a genetic level deep within inside of our cells, where this mutation is essentially taking us away from the basic and instinctive human fears, and it's allowing us to align with higher Atlantean type frequencies, at least as part of the next step. Or if you think Gemini, Venus in Gemini, this has the ability to get to what's called the logoic body. And so, you know, you have the physical body, the astral body, the mental body, which is where we are collectively, and we're moving into the causal body, which is like where we get our messages from spirit, from source, into the physical body, which we're not there as a collective, but you'll have certain individuals in the world that can tap that. And then we step into what's considered the atmic body, which is the higher evolution of the emotional or intuitive bodies, you know, or astral body. And then you get into this Buddhic body, where now this is the high octave of where we currently are, okay? The mental body, where essentially the mind is no longer in this superficial state of reality, this superficial state of existence, where we allow ourselves to get caught in our mind, and we can be more omnipresent as we step through and embody the feelings that exist in life. And that will happen kind of the first square. It'll challenge us to do that, to feel, okay, to feel deeply, and to stop gaslighting ourselves by mentally creating confusion. And so that's just the first 6 bodies. And so right now we're at the 3rd body, and I'm telling you, this is what it takes to get number 6, right? And then 7 is considered the monadic body, and it's like, this is just like, things just, you might as well just consider the evaporation. And then eventually, beyond that, we get to this 8th plane, this 8th dimensional reality, which is talking this Lagoa body. And it actually is gate 20 in human design. It's where we're going to be at the beginning of Venus and Gemini. Is how we're starting, and superficiality is one of the main culprits that blocks this Lagoa body. And this is essentially saying, like, look, like we're going to be forced to face the illusions on this square. We're going to look at our social peers and start to realize, like, are you recognizing someone being inauthentic and deciding to speak with them anyways? I promise you, you're not going to be anywhere close to the Lagoic body, if so. And it's not even like it's a mission, or like, oh, I need to ascend to get to this Lagoic body, but eventually we will all get there as a people. Eventually we will all mutate, and it's going to take help from the solar plexus, which allows us to experience freedom by embracing humanity. And to embrace humanity, we must embrace pain and suffering together, and realize that we'll never essentially transcend that. It's a part of what motivates us and pushes us gently from behind, okay, in unity. So, you know, when I think Venus and Gemini, separate from all of the genetic pieces, ultimately the message that I'm getting is be willing to validate and find value in speaking your truth, and beyond speaking your truth, looking at your deeper fears, one around spirituality, one around the evolution of humanity, and how we're working towards freedom and moving and transcending the mind itself. Allow yourself to become the channel where you don't intellectually align or identify so deeply with any one thing, any one thought, any one chaotic behavior or foundational pattern you discovered while all this Taurus energy is in the sky. From what, 2 to 7 years old, or yeah, from about 2 to 7 years old, these patterns were formed at a foundational level before you can consciously step into your neocortex and beginning to, you know, use consciousness to step outside of yourself. It's asking us to be present, where once you realize you can do that and you can consciously reflect on something which requires you to step out of your body, eventually it's like, can you get back in the body and more consciously be present in the now, which you've all heard. And so this is something where when we can do that, we essentially transcend the mental body and we allow ourselves to receive direct messages from spirit through clear audience. And clear audience in this particular example and scenario equates to now that you're present, you're getting messages that you will eventually be able to simultaneously intellectually hear angels and dragons and other fabled creatures like gnomes and, you know, ascended masters and spirit guides and ancestors. You'll be able to hear them in real time. And in order to do that, what you often need to do is be willing to, you know, embrace the mundane reality of sitting for 3 days in the same spot and only feeling like 2 minutes went by. And it's like, look at animals and realize that this is how they operate. An animal can just sit, and you look at a dog and it's on the same stump every day. It's like, yo, how could this dog sit on this stump every day? Wait for me, get excited, and then sit all over again once he runs his energy out. And it's like, when you can do that as a human, things that used to matter to the mind completely cease to exist as for something of substance. And then we begin to desire to operate as channels, where we can, in return through clear audience, bring back those channeled messages, which is not even bringing it back, but just express those channeled messages in real time, where you essentially surrender your human, I don't want to say existence, but in some ways, yes, like the will to speak from the lower mind and thinking that you're important, or you're taking this elitist approach that I was speaking, and instead, like, the most beautiful things that I feel begins to happen is it's the tension and the pressure between Venus squaring Saturn and Venus squaring Neptune, these outer planets, these collective big bodies that dissolve barriers. And so we're going, in the first square, we're going to be presented the barrier, and we're going to be feeling really driven to finally start working and creating, because while Mars is in Cancer, it's like Aries energy has dwindled down. And a lot of this is happening preemptive to the solar eclipse in Aries. And it's like, when you add that wind and that fire, it's very different than the fire in the earth, okay, and the fire in the water. The wind and the fire, they're more cataclysmic. They're more driving forces that will get us to create some of the most Picasso-like imaginary pieces of art that inspires and that motivates and that heals, okay, through a divine expression. And this is ultimately the beauty behind Venus and Gemini, and it requires a certain sense of versatility. And it's like, look, a lover with Venus and Gemini, or, you know, could be the heart, but it's like Venus and Gemini often has that energy where it's like, it's social peers, especially the diverse ones, people from different ethnic backgrounds, languages, and cultures. That is Venus and Gemini, and what it truly cares about, that becomes the lungs. That's what gives it life, to desire to breathe, to desire to exist, they find the most beauty in how diverse can my friendship circles and cultures be. This looks like getting into a circle or a network where you work with your peers and you speak with them, and they expand your sense of thought. They expand you from previously stuck thought while Mercury was in Taurus, okay? Certain mundane, realistic, everyday, I can do this, I can make sense of this, and ground it into my intelligence, where it becomes a skill that I know, if I care about it enough. When you get into Gemini, it's starting to value as a people, as a culture. Well, what extends as differentiation outside of that current knowing, taking that knowing that you refuse to be mediocre with, and instead be unique and exquisite in that artful expression, and now sharing it. And it's like, when I share that with this foreigner, and that foreigner shares it with the next foreigner, now we're creating this melting pot of what essentially frees us and allows us to feel optimistic and lucky and joyful. And this is how I see the Venus and Gemini transit. So if you're vibing with that, what I want to say is, it's like, You know, make sure you don't choose the vain approach to think that you're so important or what you have to do is so important that you don't do it for others. If you can align with doing and creating and being and speaking and loving for others, ultimately will mutate. So get around some young people, some youthful type energies, and they'll better explain to you through action and through experience and through moving and walking and riding your bike and through rollerblading, all these activities that we're gonna, and Venus and Gemini start to enjoy activities that are just different than what we do on a day-to-day. And it's like locally in our environment, we don't even have to go anywhere far during Venus and Gemini. It's like you're gonna be able to start seeing the same things that were already in existence, and you're gonna find a new joy for life in experiencing each one of those things, going to an art gallery and, you know, listening to an animal, watching an insect operate, and realize how closely linked we are to insects, because the lower frequencies of this Venus and Gemini is just to be busy, confusing it with production rather than staying still, to wait, to respond to what is actually going to be productive. And that takes practice to not just move, because all of the generations and people before you move, aka Taurus, that's how they treated it and was taught Hierophant energy to be productive. So this is what I got for Venus and Gemini. Hit the thumbs up again, hit the thumbs up again, hit the thumbs up right now. Thank you. This is your AstroShaman, Pernell Bobby. We are generating an economy of harmony, leveraging human design and genetic astrology. We're meeting again this Sunday, April 16th, depending on when you watch this video. Venus will already be in there by the Venus and Gemini shifts April 11th on one of our members' birthdays. So shout out to you, happy birthday if you happen to watch this. My birthday is on April 14th, so again, throw that thumbs up for the birthday love. Subscribe if you're brand new and you rock with the message. This is my particular take and interpretation. Understand it's my particular take and interpretation. Like, there's going to be many out there. So Venus Gemini is like, look, do a lot of learning, do a lot of sporadical, versatile learning, and learn something interesting, new, things that actually trigger your excitement to make you feel young again. 2 on screen. Thank you. I'll see you all soon.